If you love me, please don't judge me. Got my hands tied, the power's above me. Don't shoot the messenger, I'm just a puppet here. If you wanna place blame, then look to the puppeteer. Family, fortune, envy, jealousy, privilege, passed on, legacy, secret, sabotage, borderline, felony, suicide, subtract, selfish, pedigree, yeah.
How's it going, everybody? C-RadTV back here with another video. So, of course, we're at another part of the What If NASCAR Had the F1 Point System series. So, the last time in this series, in the previous part, we looked at the 1990s if NASCAR had the F1 point system. And quite a few things would have changed for sure. A lot would have been rewritten. There would have been a number of title changes. And in this part, we're going to look at the 2000s of NASCAR and see how those seasons would have shaped out if they had the F1 point system. And of course, the 2000s was known, of course, as the turn of the millennium. And this was when NASCAR was really at its peak and was rivaling right on the NFL's ass in ratings. So, of course, before we jump into the series, I'll show the 2-point systems that were used in the 2000s. So we have the top 6 format, which was used till 2002. Then in 2003, the points format would go through a change where now it would be the top 8 finishers would get points. But the max points you can gain or lose in a race is 10 points still. And of course, I believe part of this was because of the increased competition in the field coming up. So try and reward and still make running up front still matter. Like, the big emphasis is still put on winning, running well, and consistency. And before we jump right into the series, in this part though, let me just stress out here that once again, this is just a hypothetical scenario. I know everyone would have raced differently had this format been in play. This is just for fun. So now, with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and let's jump right into it. So in 2000, we had a 3-man battle for the championship between Bobby Labonte, Jeff Burton, and Tony Stewart. All three were very close with each other all season. All three seemed to have one edge over the other. In the end, this championship, it would go down to the final race of the season, with all three still mathematically eligible for the championship. Between those three, in the season finale at Atlanta, Tony Stewart, he would end up retiring from the race due to handling issues, so that eliminated him from the championship. Jeff Burton had to start at the back of the field, and he just struggled throughout the day, finished mid-pack, while Bobby Labonte started in the top 10. He ran around the bottom of the top 5, around the top of the top 10. Jeff Burton would end up finishing 12th at Atlanta. Bobby Labonte would finish 5th. And that 5th place, and the fact that Jeff Burton did not finish in the points, that would be enough for Bobby Labonte to lock up the championship by default. Since Jeff and Tony were in positions where they would have to win the race, and they would need Bobby to finish outside the points. Which none of that happened. So, Bobby Labonte would win his 2nd championship under this format in 2000. So the 2001 season would start off in tragedy with the death of Dale Earnhardt in the last lap of the 2001 Daytona 500. And of course, everyone still mourns his loss to this day. But after that passing, though, the season had a lot of great racing. It produced some great moments, like Steve Park winning a week after Dale's death, and then Jeff Gore would win the week after that in Vegas. And of course, Jeff beat Dale Earnhardt, one of Dale Earnhardt's biggest rivals. And then the week after that, you had Kevin Harvick, who was immediately tapped on to replace Dale Earnhardt in the 3 car, but they renumbered it to 29. He would edge out Jeff Gordon in a photo finish at Atlanta in just his 3rd career start. And then, of course, in the July race at Daytona, Dale Jr. would win at Daytona in the first race back at Daytona since the death of Dale Earnhardt. You also had the events of 9/11, which forced the championship race to become New Hampshire on Thanksgiving weekend. And yeah, 2001, it was just a bad year in general. You know, a lot of shit happened. 2001 was just a very rough year as a whole. In the end, though, the 2001 season, it was all about Jeff Gordon. He just flat out dominated the field in terms of speed and consistency. Like, just no one was on Jeff Gordon's level in 2001. And Jeff Gordon would end up cruising to his 5th championship, which would give him the 2nd most titles under this format, trailing only Richard Petty's 7. And all 5 of Jeff's titles came in an 8-year span. So now the question for the later parts of the series is, can Jeff get to 7 in this series under this format? So for 2002, this was mainly a championship battle between 5 drivers. It was between Tony Stewart, Kurt Busch, Jeff Gordon, rookie Ryan Newman, and Matt Kenseth. All five were neck and neck with each other all season. Sterling Marlin was also a good in it for the good part of it too, but then Sterling Marlin had his season-ending crash at Kansas, which would eliminate him from the title battle. For Jeff Gordon and Ryan Newman, they would be eliminated with around a race to go in the season, since both of them failed to be consistent when it mattered the most. So entering Homestead, this was also the first year that Homestead Miami was the championship. Was the season finale. The first year Homestead was the final race of the year. And we would have a close 3-man battle for the championship between Kurt Busch, Tony Stewart, and Matt Kenseth. All 3 close with each other. For Kurt, all he had to do was win the race and have Tony and Matt Kenseth finish outside the points, or at least finish 5th. If Kurt wanted to win the title, Tony and Matt, one of them had to finish in the points or just finish ahead of the other to win the championship. In the season finale at Homestead, Matt Kenseth would suffer an engine failure late in the race. Tony Stewart, he started up in the top 10, but he would just struggle completely throughout the race and finished around mid-pack. But Kurt Busch late in the race, with all that happening, all Kurt had to do late in the race was win the race to win the championship. And Kurt Busch would come in clutch and win his 1st championship in just his 2nd season. And keep in mind, this was when Kurt Busch was extremely hated for being a pampered little shit. Just imagine if Kurt Busch acting the way he was in 2002. Just imagine if he ended up winning the championship that year. Oh, he would have easily been one of the most hated drivers in the sport, without a doubt. But for Kurt Busch, I believe under this format, Kurt Busch would prove that his way of being a little bit of a prick would work for him in the long run, since he would end up with a title in this year. But the only thing Kurt Busch will be remembered for, of course, was his pissing match with Jimmy Spencer. But yeah, Kurt Busch, he would win the championship by just 1 point over Tony Stewart. In fact, the top 3 were only separated by 2 points. It was a close championship. So for 2003 was mainly all about Ryan Newman. Newman was just an absolute beast. He won an assload of poles, had 8 wins in 2003. 2003 was the year he earned the nickname the Rocket Man. And of course, Newman's only close competition, him or Jimmy Johnson, Dale Jr., and Jeff Gordon. All 3 would fall apart late in the season and fail to be consistent when it mattered the most in key points in the year. And Ryan Newman would end up pulling away from all 3. And Newman would end up cruising to his 1st championship in just his 2nd season. So from 2004 on, this is when this series really gets hypothetical. because the 2004 was the introduction of the chase for the Cup, which, of course, we all know started at 10 drivers, then went to 12 drivers, then we had the 10 and 2 wild cards, and then the chase fucking grid happened, which evolved into what we have today. So, yeah, 2004 Honest World becomes hypothetical, but we're still going to do it just for fun. So, anyway, 2004, the championship was mainly a three-man battle between Jimmy Johnson, Dale Jr., and Jeff Gordon. And, of course, for Jimmy and Jeff, tragedy would strike late in the season for Hendrick Motorsports with the plane crash that killed a lot of Hendrick personnel. Killed was Rick Hendrick's brother, I think it was Jeff Hendrick, or Larry Hendrick, including both of his twin daughters. Hendrick Motorsports lead engineer Randy Dunn, and then Rick Hendrick's son, Ricky Hendrick. And of course, Ricky played a big factor along with Jeff Gordon in having Hendrick Motorsports recruit Jimmy Johnson. And of course, this happened after, the news of this plane crash happened after Jimmy Johnson won at Martinsville late in the season. And Jimmy was not allowed to celebrate the win because of the events that transpired. A week later, though, Jimmy Johnson would come through and win in Atlanta for an emotional win for everyone at Hendrick Motorsports, a good healing moment. And of course, late in the season, this was when Jimmy Johnson really got hot at the right time. And he would end up using that hot streak and motivation and would power through. And Jimmy Johnson would actually lock up his first championship with a race to go in the Southern 500 at Darlington. So Jimmy would edge out Gordon and Jr. with a race to go by winning at Darlington. That would be enough for Jimmy to lock up his first championship with those 10 Angels on the car. So under this format, Jimmy Johnson would win his first title in only 3 seasons, which was the same amount of time it took Jeff Gordon to win his first championship under this format. And of course, Randy Dunn's passing, like I mentioned a couple times before, it still would be one of the biggest what-ifs for NASCAR. What if Randy Dunn never died in that plane crash? How much more dominant would Hendrick Motorsports be today? Hell, would Jeff Gordon get to 100 wins? Would Jimmy Johnson also still win and get to 100 wins? Would both Jimmy and Jeff win 7 titles? And the truth is, we'll never truly know. So for 2005, this was mainly a 2-man championship between Tony Stewart and Greg Biffle. Both were neck and neck with each other all year. Jimmy Johnson was also part of this championship battle too, but Jimmy Johnson would fall off late in the season and he would fail to be consistent when it mattered the most. So Jimmy would be eliminated with a couple races to go in the year. And of course, when it looked like Biffle had this title on lockdown, of course, this was also the years Tony Stewart went on a tear in the summer. Mainly, all 5 of Tony Stewart's wins in 2005 came between the months of June to August. Like, he dominated the summer. Because one of the things Tony Stewart was famous for was always winning in the summer months between June through August. And of course, by the end of the year, Tony Stewart was then at his absolute best. And Biffle would fall off a little bit and fail to be consistent when it mattered the most. And Tony Stewart would end up locking up the championship over Biffle with a race to go in a season. So under this format, this would be Tony Stewart's first championship. Now, Greg Biffle would go on and win Homestead in a photo finish over Mark Martin. But all that win did, it just made the championship look a lot closer than it actually was. So before we go into 2006, I'll give a shout out to Black Flags Matter, who did a video on this season. If NASCAR had the F1 point system in 2006, he went very in-depth in this season about how the championship battle would have gone if the point system was in play. So I'll give him a shout out there and credit for 2006, since he did this season already, just recently actually. I'll leave a link to his video in the description down below. I mentioned a lot about what I You know, I mentioned about Black Flags Matter doing these videos on NASCAR having the F1 point system is one of my inspirations to do this series. I mentioned that in the previous part of this What If series. So, like I said, link in the description to this video on the 2006 season for Black Flags Matter in the description down below. So I'll do a quick rundown on the championship battle in 2006. So 2006, it was mainly a 5-man battle for the championship between Jimmie Johnson, Matt Kenseth, Kevin Harvick, Kasey Kahne, and Tony Stewart. Sadly, this was one of those championship battles where not everyone could compete for the title, as Matt Kenseth, Kevin Harvick, and Kasey Kahne would all fall off late in the year, and all would fail to be consistent when it mattered the most, so they would be eliminated with around a race or two to go in the season. So the championship would go down to the season finale at Homestead, Miami, between Jimmie Johnson and Tony Stewart. Tony was in a position where he would pretty much have to win the race and would need Jimmie to finish like 8th or worse to win the championship. And this championship battle was very anticlimactic at Homestead. Like, Tony Stewart had started at the start of the back in the field, and his team missed the setup completely, and he struggled to finish mid-pack. Jimmie Johnson early in the race got a fist-sized hole in his grill, but they were able to repair it, and Jimmie Johnson was able to come all the way back. And Jimmie ran around the bottom of the points, but Jimmie Johnson would end up finishing 9th, mainly because he knew he had the championship locked up by default. So he coasted to the finish line when I believe he was like 7th or 8th before he coasted to the finish line. Just taking it easy and taking care of his stuff. So under this one, in a very anticlimactic championship battle, Jimmie Johnson would win his 2nd championship in 3 years, edging out Tony Stewart by 7 points. So 2007, this was the championship battle of Jimmie Johnson versus Jeff Gordon. Both drivers were neck and neck with each other all season. And this was also the year that you had to drive both the Gen 4 and the Gen 5 car. Under both cars, Jimmie drove better than Jeff in the Gen 5 car, but the Gen 4 car, Jeff drove better than Jimmie. So it was really a really close battle between the two of them all year. Jimmie, when it looked like Jeff had it locked up in the bag, Jimmie Johnson would end up pulling away from him late in the season by Jimmie winning 4 of the last 5 races. And at the end of that 4-race winning streak, that would be when Jimmie Johnson would officially lock up the championship over Jeff Gordon with a race to go in the season at Phoenix. So Jimmie Johnson would end up winning his 3rd championship and his 2nd consecutive championship. So this would be Jimmie's 3rd title in 4 years. So in this one, Jimmie would best Jeff in 2007 under this format. So 2008, this was known as the year of the real Big Three. This was the Big Three before the Big Three became a big deal in today's NASCAR. So this Big Three consisted of Carl Edwards, Jimmie Johnson, and Kyle Busch. All 3 of them combined to win 24 of 36 races on the schedule. So they combined to win 2/3 of the total races in the season, with Carl having 9 wins, Kyle Busch having 8 wins, and Jimmie Johnson having 7 wins. So all 3 were making a solid case for the title push, but in the end, Kyle Busch and Jimmie Johnson, they would fall off late in the season and fail to be consistent when it mattered the most. Carl Edwards would take advantage and win 3 of the last 5 races, and Carl Edwards would end up pulling away and walk up the championship with a race to go in the season. So in 2008, under this format, Carl Edwards would win his 1st championship. So for 2009, it was mainly a battle between a 5-man battle for the championship between Jimmie Johnson, Mark Martin, Jeff Gordon, Denny Hamlin, and Tony Stewart. All 5 were strong at certain points in the year. Jeff Gordon, despite having 1 win, he was mainly in this battle because he was very damn consistent in 2009. Jimmie Johnson had a lot of speed along with Tony Stewart and Mark Martin as well. Hamlin, he struggled the first half of the year, but he had a solid second half of the season to get himself back in the championship hunt. But in the end, not everyone can compete for the championship. Tony Stewart, Jeff Gordon, Denny Hamlin, and Mark Martin would all fail to be consistent late in the season when it mattered the most. And Jimmie Johnson, he would take full advantage of their inconsistencies by winning 4 of the last 9. And Jimmie Johnson, he would pull away from the competition, and Jimmie would lock up the championship with a race to go in the season. So Jimmie Johnson would end up winning his 4th championship under this format. So Jimmie Johnson would still have 4 championships after 2009 under this format like he did in real life. But Jimmie Johnson would have gotten those 4 titles a lot differently than he did in real life. But yeah, anyway, that's going to wrap it up for this video here. So yeah, there was quite a lot to talk about. There were a lot of championship battles in this one. Like, we even had a couple 5-man championship battles, which is pretty unheard of for a big part of it. But yeah, in terms of the championships that would have changed in this decade, there would have been 4 titles that changed. Those 4 being 2002, 2003, 2004, and 2008. And we would have had 3 championships go down to the final race of the season. So, there were some great moments here for sure. But yeah, and quite a few things would have changed under here. We would have had some different champions for sure. But yeah, anyway, that's going to wrap it up here for this part here. So, the next part we're going to be going to the 2010s. Seeing what would have happened if the 2010s had the F1 points format. And of course, the 2010s for the Cup Series, that'll be the final part for the Cup Series in this What If series. Before we move on to the Xfinity Series here, since we are going to be doing Xfinity and trucks under the F1 points format as well. But yeah, anyway, that's going to wrap it up here. That's all I got to say. Hope everyone's a great day, and yeah, peace out.